Hello, hello. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. I don't think I have ever really said that on any of my videos, but I hear other people say it. So, Jess here. Uh, this is probably going to be one of the more, I hope you don't hear like the wind. It's a little breezy, so sorry if you hear any wind in my earbuds here. I'll try to cover it. This is probably going to be one of my more esoteric videos. So I've been sharing a video from last summer that I did called Reptilian Consciousness. If you haven't listened to it, please go back and watch that video before listening to this one. Another good one would be Battle of the Crowns. Both of those talk about a topic that I'm going to kind of bring together here because I've had a couple requests of people wanting more information on this idea of reptilian consciousness. So what I talked about in that video is this idea of like the way our bodies are hijacked by certain dark forces. Now, this is a subject that can seem completely insane, impossible, conspiracy theory, whatever you want to call it. Take it or leave it, honestly. If I had watched a video like this a few years ago, I would have been like, that's some crazy shit that I'm not going to believe. But from things that I have just... Anyone who understands claircognizance, and that a lot of times as you start to connect with your awaken your third eye and that connection to source, you get this just knowing, this inner knowing of just you just know that this is what it is. That's kind of how I feel about this topic. I have been following various different individuals in like the cosmic world, the extraterrestrial interdimensional beings, people who have been a part of MK Ultra experiments, Project Monarch, people who have been part of the secret space programs, and people in the spiritual world. So I've taken in a variety of information and individuals over the last 8 years that I kind of started diving down the rabbit hole of conspiracies, which started with the V's when I was pregnant with my first son. So that was that first stepping stone toward where I am now, which a lot of people would consider crazy, which is fine because you do think it's crazy until you start to just understand it yourself. So I've kind of pieced together certain aspects of like the alien world with cosmic stuff, with spiritual, just all of that has just kind of resonated as what I feel is happening. So I'm not saying this is necessarily the right thing or even the only possibility. I'm sure there's a variety of different ways of understanding this. This is just going to be explained in the way that I understand it. And like I said, I've become a lot more energetically aware. So I can really notice people's energies. And that's developed a lot over even just the last year. Where I can just kind of feel a disconnection of the soul in a lot of people right now. So I'm going to start there by saying, with the start of this pandemic, we began with the fear of the virus and using masks. And obviously over time, that progressed into everyone being ready for the V and get the jab and like go back to normal, and then we don't need the mask anymore. And now we're at this place of all of these people have gotten the jab, yet they're all also told that they have to still wear the masks. So why is that? So a lot of the same people who have been wearing masks are still wearing masks. So what we're seeing are the ones who have like been jabbed and still wearing a mask. Those are the ones that are extremely controlled in this mind control experiment, for lack of a better term. If you know MK Ultra, that's what I feel that this is. I feel this is an extension of an MK Ultra experiment. If you haven't looked into MK Ultra, I do have other videos below. I'm pretty sure I have a video on MK Ultra and societal experiments, something like that. So go check out that video too. That'll explain a little bit more what that is. But basically, it started in, I want to say the 50s-ish, maybe a little earlier. And it's a kind of like mind experimentation to be able to control humans and the way we think. So it's progressed from like that generation of the 50s and 60s, from like radios and just started to get into TVs. And now it's progressed into like phones and social media and YouTube and what we are exposed to now with like 5G and stuff like that. So I feel we've seen a progression of how they use technologies to control our minds. Now, it isn't just as simple as like, we want them to do what we want them to do. Oh, look at the little sheep walking the street. We want them to do this and this. There's more intention behind that. So let's first talk about, it's hard to kind of break down what to say first. Let's first talk about how this happens. So the way I can say feel this happens, Rudolf Steiner was the first person who really brought this awareness to me. It was something I was thinking about last summer, and I think it was Thomas Cohen that talked about Rudolf Steiner in one of his videos, and I read some of this stuff on how pharmaceuticals and jabs eliminate the soul. And it was exactly what I had been feeling. So that really confirmed what my knowing was kind of trying to get across. And again, the Battle of the Crowns video that I did last year talks about that as well. The Battle of the Crowns being the battle of the corona versus the crown chakra. Basically, which is stronger? This fear virus or your own consciousness? And that's what I feel like we're battling. We're battling the fear virus versus your consciousness. Okay? So fear brings us into a state of survival, fight or flight. So just think about how this progressed over last year, bringing this fear of getting sick, dying, whatever it is. So it puts everybody in this fight or flight mode of survival. Masks increase that because it's covering your mouth, which suppresses your breath. It puts your breath in a very shallow state. And that automatically brings you into a fight-flight dynamic energy. It brings you into what's called a survival mode. In this state, you are not able to think rationally. You are only thinking in terms of surviving in the present moment. Okay? So you do whatever it is that you have to do, or what you feel like others or what someone's telling you that you have to do to survive, you're going to do it. So that is what a lot of people did. The ones who have been diligently wearing masks the whole time were in that state of survival mode, not thinking rationally, very, very quickly walked in and got the jab. They were the first ones who were like, sign me up. And then getting that jab in itself is a certain form of consent to a soul hijacking. And what that means is they are consenting to these medicines that almost, I don't want to say detach the soul, because I don't think you can. I've had mixed feelings about this, because I have felt that it detaches the soul so that another dark entity can almost take over the body. But I've also felt like that's not necessarily possible. It's like possession. So the original soul is still in the body. It's pushed under the surface and being controlled by a different dark entity. That's exactly what possession is. And we see it in religious, we've seen lots of movies, Exorcist, that kind of Exorcism. Emily Rose was a really interesting one to me. I've been super fascinated by those things as well, and now I'm starting to understand why. I've gotten an understanding of what all of that dynamic really is, because there are behaviors that happen within those possessions that show, hi kitty, the original soul is still present. They let it know that they're present. You're gonna knock that over. Like they're in there and they're fighting back. But there also is a completely separate entity of its own consciousness. Because they will share, whether it be like languages or things that the original soul could never have possibly known. Like Exorcism of Emily Rose was one of them, that in the possession state, the language that was spoken was like a completely ancient, I think only written language, and there's like one person on the world or whatever who can actually speak that language. Something like that, such a very, 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 very ancient language. And in the possession state, she was speaking this language fluently. So that is one example of how these dark consciousnesses come through. And you can call it demon, devil, whatever you want to call it. I call it a dark consciousness. Getting these jabs are one method of a way of suppressing the soul. And I also feel like regular medications do the same thing. Like any medications for mental illnesses, 1,000,000% suppress and numb your soul. They're not fixing you. They're not healing anything. There's not a balance of chemicals that's happening. That's completely a bullshit lie. Sorry, but it is. If you notice any type of benefits from taking these medications for any kind of mental illness, it's because it is suppressing your soul and the emotional expression of your soul. I have a history of certain mental illness and schizophrenia in my family, so I speak to this personally because I've done some like regression work into my grandmother, who was diagnosed as schizophrenic. Has had a lot of... This video is going to be very cut up because I'm losing memory. Got to clear stuff out and come back. Okay, so there's a very strong divide between the people who have been suppressed and the vulnerability to them being kind of taken over by a darker consciousness. It doesn't mean all of those people will be. It means that they're all much more vulnerable to the controlling, to two things: the control coming from above that's telling them, fear this, do this to be normal, do this to continue the life that you think they're free doing, um, sit in the submission of normal society, and this consciousness takeover of these dark entities, which also I think is very connected. I got this a couple years ago too, and I've gotten a couple people who have said the same thing. These individuals are also the ones highly susceptible to the dark consciousness taking over their body and performing heinous acts, like the Gabby Petito case. Quantum Reality RV, Miriam is there. Watch her videos. She explains this exactly how I feel it is, of the way that she was killed, and that it was a dark entity that took over the boyfriend's body, that his soul was not present and was not aware of the situation going on, and she is now dead. And I think this is super common in these weird disappearances, weird murders, mass shootings, these suicide bombings. All of this are conscious takeovers, dark conscious taking over a human body and performing these acts. A normal person does not do any of that. No one is just like, no, let's go kill somebody. That's not a normal human train of thought. Like, we've come to be like, yeah, some humans are just shitty people. I mean, yes or no, yes and no. Some people do lean bad, but I think some of the worst people that we know historically, Charles Manson would be another good example. What is it? The Dahmers, all of those stories that we know about historically, all of the ones that have like made news and headlines, I strongly believe are connected to this kind of dark consciousness taking over an individual and killing people or harming people in these ways without that original consciousness having any control over themselves. That's why often when a person comes back, like, there's tons of evidence showing that person's link, and the person is kind of like, I just don't remember, or like, it happens a lot more than you think. We see like the ones televised, but it happens often, from what I understand. And this boyfriend of Gabby will be the same. I don't think he's going to have much recollection at all of what happened to her. And there was two people in Moab that I were linked, or I should say I didn't link them. The Miriam at Quantum Reality, she said that those two are linked as well in a similar way. And this all comes back to these like satanic rituals. These reptilian beings, Draco, these beings that do these acts that have no compassion or care for a human being, but also because that they know this creates certain karmic cycles and traumas in the human, but they also know of the human superpower potential. So being able to do this keeps humans spiritually suppressed. Because if we evolve the way that we are going to evolve, and we are moving to evolve right now, like the other timeline of individuals that I am linking to, or I feel like I'm linking to as much more now, this second timeline are the people who are completely liberating themselves from these takeovers and these controlling entities and these darknesses. We will still have to share a world with some dark, but our awareness of the dark is going to make things, I don't want to say easier, but we do still have that polarity in the quantum. That's just the way our reality is. But this timeline of higher evolution of humans is going to pull us out of this vulnerability of all of this dark conscious takeovers. These are extreme darkness. And hopefully as we shift more and more, we'll be able to completely rid our connection to these really dark 4D beings. Because if we evolve up into this fifth dimension, and this is nothing to do with intelligence, this is strictly dimensional, vibrational based consciousness. If we shift, as we shift individually and collectively, it will take a while, years, 10 years, maybe even more, for us to really shift collectively. It removes us from the frequency of these dark entities being able to access our physical bodies, because our resonance will then be above theirs. Right now, see, they're 4D, so we're transitioning up. That's why we're so vulnerable right now. We're transitioning from 3D, where they were above us. Technically, they were above us in like vibration, but they're very dark. Now we're transitioning, and kind of even as we're shifting into a 5D frequency. So that's why we're seeing such amplified amounts of this darkness showing up, because they know that their time is limited. And they're trying as much as they can to pull as many people down with them to drag this out. What else did I want to say about this? We will shift. It will take time. Oh, the other thing I want to note, a lot of the loss that we're seeing right now, the physical deaths, are in people who are of a much lower vibrate frequency. I'm not saying intelligence or smartness, we're talking strictly frequency level. The lower frequency beings that are being ushered out of this realm in order to make room for higher vibrational life. As in a lot of the new children, lots of new, see, we have death and rebirth. So the death of these lower frequency individuals, a lot of our elderly population, not that they are not valuable. I hold a lot of value to elders and wisdom and knowledge that way. But strictly with what we're dealing with right now, those are kind of being cleared out in a way to make room for higher frequency beings, which is a lot of our new births and children being born into the world the last several years. Because those beings, those are our little beautiful high vibrational little star seeds and beings that we must really take care of and honor, because those, our children right now, our children are going to change the world. We're not the ones that are going to change the world. Our children are going to change the world in the future. 10, 15, 20 years from now, they will transform this planet back to its beautiful, natural, vibrant self. Loving energy, peacefulness, co-creation and collaboration. We're going to be a part of it, but we're going to be the elders. We're going to be the wisdom to those children. So we need to hold that strong wisdom of what's happening so we can support our children in their growth into this new world and what can be created in the future. And that is all of our roles right now, our way showers and light workers, is to be able to usher in that new frequency and hold the space and hold our frequency, because that's what we need. So I'm going to leave the video at that. I hope this was a good explanation, further explanation of how this kind of consciousness shift is working and what's happening why it seems so dark right now, but it will improve. So, love and gratitude, friends. Bye.